welcome. Thank you so much for joining this session. The partnership between OFEGA and WSPS is one of my favorite opportunities to meet with their membership. And this webinar series is one of a few of those opportunities that we do share. So once again, thank you for joining this session on multilingual work environments. As Ben indicated, my role is as a health and safety consultant with WSPS that supports the agricultural sector. And in order to be effective in our efforts related to health and safety in the workplace, farm or otherwise, we do need to ensure that we are effective in our communication to be sure that the messages we have provided about safe operating procedures or practices have been not only sent in a complete and effective way, but received so they can be utilized for prevention of incidents and losses in the workplace. So in this session, we will talk through some of the components related to communication in general, and then in particular, acknowledging the multicultural and multilingual workplaces that do exist within this sector. And I will welcome all of you throughout the presentation to share your questions as well as your strategies. What is working well? And perhaps challenges. Where are you battling in effective communication in your workplace? Within this event, our objectives truly are to share information, not only from OFEGA and WSPS to the participants, but among the participants. So once again, I'll encourage you to share using the chat as well using the raise hand function, and we will attend to those comments and questions as we go. The topics that we will consider together are communication barriers. What are those challenges that are present within perhaps your workplaces or in general to ensure that those messages are effectively sent, received, and then utilized by individuals related to health and safety? Strategies or tips to overcome or manage effectively through those communication barriers. And some of those strategies very well may be resources that you have come across, as well that between OFEGA and WSPS, we will share with you that are available to support in the way of demonstration, translation, and other resources that may support you to ensure that effective communication when we do have such essential messages such as prevention of incidents and losses within your workplaces. So I'll begin with a question for you, and I welcome you to share examples of communication barriers. What are the challenges or obstacles that you encounter in your workplaces or in general when we do have multicultural and multilingual exposures? And as you put thought to that question, I'll mention that just like Canada, we are quite a large pot of various cultures, languages, experiences, and otherwise within this sector. And undoubtedly, within each of your workplaces, you do have individuals, whether permanent residents within Canada or those who are participants in a temporary foreign agricultural worker program, who join your workplace throughout the year, perhaps from one season to the next or intermittently, that bring about these many differences that then as employers and supervisors especially, though all individuals within the workplaces, we do need to attend to those differences. So without any thoughts in the chat so far, but I will welcome you as they do come to mind. Thank you so much, Amanda. So those who are trainers that may not be fluent in other languages, using in-house translators and may not be sure of what is actually being communicated, if the entire message, the context of the message perhaps, is coming across the way that the trainer would in their language of preference or confidence, perhaps. Thank you so much for that offering. And I will reinforce, as a facilitator who regrettably only speaks English and sometimes could be questionable of the quality, even. It is a challenge when we do need to then rely on a support, whether that is a device or another individual, to take that message in the way that we intend and share it to other individuals. We'll talk through some of those challenges that may not become a silver bullet solution, but certainly a few thoughts or questions to consider when we do engage in that type of support. So no doubt, simply the differences in that culture and language exposure that may be present within the workplace, although not a negative whatsoever, can be a barrier, challenge, or obstacle to ensure that effective communication. So let us take some opportunity to navigate through those components as examples. And a little data to share with you on this topic in particular. Now, although not agricultural specific, some data had been collected over a period of time in recent history that then allows us to project the way that the population in Canada, as well as those who report to Canada for their work, may change year over year. And ultimately, it is an increase in the number of different cultures and languages that we can expect to see year over year into our future. We have so many different cultures and languages in not only the agricultural sector, but in general in our population that we do need to make that effort to attend to meet their needs, as well as the needs within the workplace for their protection and prevention of incidents or losses. Now, some of the challenges that are present in the population as well as within the agricultural sector is that the culture within a workplace, so a little different from ethnicity or the country that we may reside in usually, but the culture within our workplace, is safety important or not, may be new for these individuals who are joining our workplaces. Standards and culture within countries other than Canada, workplaces other than yours, even in Canada, are widely different from one to another. So certainly as employers and supervisors, recognizing that the standards in place in your workplace are likely better, you're in this session, and may be different from previous experiences for individuals who are new or who have not been to your workplace for an extended period of time. So the importance to remind what is normal and reasonable within the culture in your workplace. For example, some of the very direct rights that are available to workers in Ontario, including the right to know about hazards and to ensure protection from those hazards, the right to participate in our health and safety program or system by asking questions, making recommendations, and perhaps as a health and safety representative or joint health and safety committee, and even the right to refuse work that is acknowledged as unsafe. These rights are different from other jurisdictions, and especially for those who may reside in provinces other than Ontario, but even more specifically, countries other than Canada, that right to refuse work that is unsafe is not familiar. And ensuring that we do reinforce Again, what is normal and reasonable within your workplaces, including that intention and purpose of protection of all people within your workplaces, regardless of where they may hail from. Further, some of the norms in cultures aside from our workplace culture may differ as well in our communication methods. For example, eye contact. In some cultures, and quite often throughout North America, looking at someone in the eyes, as I attempt to do through the camera with you, is a sign of attentiveness. We are listening, we are acknowledging the information, and perhaps we are providing some comfort and confidence to those that we are talking with or working with that attentive level. However, in other cultures, eye contact, where we are holding the view of others, may be perceived as intimidating, even aggressive. It may feel almost like invading someone's space, even with our eyes. So, some understanding about what might be different from one culture to another, even in that simple component of eye contact in our communication. Some others leading to literal personal space, the physical space that we take up. People, individuals take up different spaces and have different levels of comfort with different spaces as well. In North America, and Europe, as well as in many of the Asian countries, people tend to stand a little further apart, provide a little more distance between individuals. And certainly over the last handful or so of years, we were guided to implement distance between people. So there's been some change in perhaps someone who might have been that very close talker or communicator 7 years ago now has a little more distance between them and other individuals. And then in some cultures, that very close physical space and even contact leading to our next is regular within their culture. And quite often within North America, it is not as conventional to lean in and give someone a kiss on the cheek to say hello, especially if we are not familiar with each other. But in many cultures and countries, that is regular. Uh, we may lean in for that handshake. Even that has become less common, especially in that handful of years. So acknowledging when there may be those differences, it is likely less about the level of respect we have for individuals, more about the level of understanding we have for that difference in cultures. A couple of other thoughts here related to gestures. The hand gestures, especially, and for those who are hand talkers when providing instruction as well, there should be some purpose in the use of the hands to provide that visual if we're demonstrating a distance or we're pointing very specifically to an object. Otherwise, in some cultures, the thumbs up or the finger point may be interpreted as hand signals in a very different way from what our intention may have been. And then the last here to share is on that point of teamwork. Working independently is highly valued in many cultures. And quite often within the agricultural sector, we may have individual tasks, but more so, we are working as a team for an overall objective, whether that is planting, processing, harvesting, packaging, or shipping. And communication on the value of that one apple as a part of the entire, I should have used a stone fruit. Let me change that for the season. One peach as part of the entire bushel really provides us with that overall result. Although my lunch involved an apple, so I suppose that was a fair reference as well. So let's talk through some of the language barriers then. And it may be oh so obvious when we speak, write, and otherwise communicate in a different language than what is the preference or where an individual has confidence in its use, there is opportunity for confusion and misunderstanding. And where we do have that reduced comprehension or understanding, especially related to health and safety, we have potential for risk and exposure to risk that may result in loss. Certainly, when an individual who is non-English speaking does not understand an instruction as essential as operation of a piece of equipment and where the emergency muster location might be, it may result in an incident or a loss. So definitely something to ensure that regardless of language, we do achieve that equal level of comprehension and understanding within the workplace. So how do we do so? I'll welcome you again to share within the chat if you have examples of what does work well. What are strategies you have found to overcome these communication barriers, whether cultural or language obstacles within your workplace? And as you put some thought to that, I'll begin with the comment that getting to know the people we work with will be our first step on this path of understanding where there may be communication barriers, likely as well, what is going to work well to overcome those barriers. So if we begin simply with discussion with your workers, as obvious as this may be, the only way to find out about individuals' abilities, preferences, and such related to communication is to ask the questions in some way. And thank you so much, Amanda. We are going to talk very specifically about the use of support such as visual aids, pictograms, and otherwise. When we're having these discussions with our workers, it gives an opportunity to begin the relationship. Quite often within the agricultural sector, if we have temporary workers, they may be temporary as they are designated within a program, but quite often it is year after year, generation after generation, even the group of workers who return to the workplaces in the agricultural sector. So beginning that relationship at the beginning of their career with your workplaces serves the employers and supervisors so well, not only for communication, but the many other aspects of your operation that you are working toward. This proactive approach where we ask questions of our workers on truly what do they need from you as employers and supervisors to understand how to protect themselves and extend that further even beyond people through to equipment and product. A good way to identify some of those needs among your employees is to ask some questions about understanding and comprehension as you do provide information. Now, I will caution, as I'm sure you do, that a head nod yes, or even the vocalized word yes in any language may not give the assurance level that we would want as employers or supervisors, that truly comprehension is finalized. Follow that up. Request some demonstration or explanation on the part of the workers to you as employers or supervisors to ensure that they have taken away the essential information within the instruction. Learn about the differences. So just as I have learned a little about differences in gestures and physical contact, whether for purpose of travel or within the workplace, some of those nuances and differences between cultures will be valuable as we exchange and interact with individuals within our workplaces. So that, of course, could be an open question with the employees in your workplace as well. to tell you a little more about their culture and what is the expectation reasonable and appropriate where they may reside and spend time in comparison to the standards that may be present within Canada, Ontario, and in particular your workplaces. Proactively then educate the rest of individuals within your workplace about those differences to perhaps broaden the standards within your workplace or navigate through to what is appropriate and reasonable among the various differences that we may have among the population within our workplace. Now, moving toward the message itself that we are sharing with individuals. Use clear and simple language. There are not extra points for extra letters or words like you might find in board games and otherwise. Direct and effective messages use clear and simple language. And especially when we do have differences in language among our population, avoid what might not be familiar in the language, like jargon or slang that have become standards in some of the conversation in perhaps the workplace, Ontario, or Canada, but may not be at all familiar to the population as a whole within your workplace. Avoid idioms as well, like it's raining cats and dogs. I'm not sure how that idiom began, but not ever have I looked out when the forecast has called for rain and seen cats or dogs falling from the sky, and it might be difficult for others to understand. I see them once in a blue moon, sitting on the fence, hit the nail on the head. There are so many idioms that we use in English and in our jurisdiction that may simply flow in the conversation that you have. Do check every so often that when you have asked for someone to not sit on the fence, that you were being figurative and you meant you would appreciate a decision, a yes or a no, not literally sitting upon the fence, although that may come up every so often as well. Acronyms are another challenge, and admittedly, within health and safety, or H&S, it is littered with acronyms. The Workplace Hazardous Materials Information System is a mouthful of words, but it does spell out that WMIS acronym that might not be as familiar. Internal Responsibility System, or IRS, the Occupational Health and Safety Act, or OHSA. When you have the opportunity in discussion, if those three terms happen to present themselves, or others like power takeoff, PTO, that are a little more agriculture specific, break that down. Ensure at least a few times in the conversation that we have been very clear about those letters that we have now put together to create a word in some instances. When you are able to slow your conversation pace as well. Now, slow does not mean translated. Slow does not mean that we are going to ensure understanding because we have reduced our pace, but slow does allow an individual who does hear and comprehend English the opportunity to process the words that are being spoken. So myself, who can run a little fast every so often, when we are sending that essential information, slow the pace just a touch so that that individual who does hear and understand English can process those words that you are sharing. Now, as mentioned, that does not mean translated. So no matter how slow we go, if the English word is still not going to be understood, it is not the right solution, of course. So, in this point being made, that will be for individuals who do hear or read and understand English. After you finish the message itself, repeat with the highlights, summarize, and ask some questions beyond the yes or no for comprehension and understanding. Perhaps to repeat back by the workers to you some of those key points, and certainly providing that opportunity for questions that they may have. Amanda's point shared about visuals to reinforce further here. Visuals are like pictures, and we often state those are worth 1,000 words. Visuals can make communication more engaging. This slide is much more interesting than the last that did not have a picture upon it. Quite often, the pictures are more memorable than simply the words on a screen or a page, and even what might be spoken to individuals. They can attract attention through colors and shapes, and can also illustrate the process that is necessary to follow within the workplace. Now, ideal, of course, would be the visuals support the words that we communicate through spoken or perhaps on paper, and maybe even a combination of those three. And the visuals will quite often emphasize those key points that you would have provided as a bit of a summary or the highlights. Now, various terms are used to explain visuals. Infographics, where information and words are positioned in a way of graphics on a screen or page. Pictograms, and if we think of one of the most common pictograms, a stop sign shape. That octagon shape indicates to stop. Some of the time, an X is used, or a circle with a slash through. All of those, when we see, regardless of what might be in between the borders, alert us that there is something that requires our attention, and quite often it's a stop, do not go until we understand what is within the borders of that pictogram. Pictures, if we have a specific piece of equipment or perhaps related to quality of a product to achieve or follow, a picture demonstrating what that objective is allows that opportunity for evaluation as well. Videos, and some great resources on this topic in the creation of short and impactful videos, even through our own devices, where we can put together the string of those key points with some demonstration that goes a long way even beyond the visuals. And diagrams, of course, quite often used or not for assembly of items. Great when we are pointing out items such as in inspection or preventative maintenance, providing us with the locations of the items that we need to find our way to. And to reinforce what's more, the point made within the chat that aids that do not use words help to communicate ideas. Absolutely. Taking the words and creating a graphic translates across all languages. Now, I mentioned demonstration as part of visuals in some way through videos. Demonstration, much like our previously mentioned aids, do not rely on language either. And some of the very basic but effective strategies for communication and training are to tell someone, show someone, and then to confirm their comprehension and understanding, ask them to tell you and show you back. Demonstration does not rely on language, translates across all of those that may be present within your workplace. Do ensure that you complete that cycle with the demonstration back to confirm understanding. Now, translation itself, of course, is an opportunity within workplaces as well. We're able to translate information that would have otherwise being presented through words, whether spoken on screen or paper, into the language of the employees, confidence or preference. The essential health and safety documents and orientation or getting to know the workplace information that is going to be especially important for those just beginning their career with your workplaces, perhaps are the priorities when we do engage with translation support. Comprehension truly does increase when the learners do not need to take that time to mentally convert each of the words into their language that is their first or their language of choice. So there are a lot of resources available, and I'll ask you in just a while if and what resources you have found to be valuable for translation. Technology, of course, using resources such as Google Translate, Bing Translator, or other AI systems that are available for us at our fingertips, as well as dictionaries and other apps can be used for translation of our basic documents. Now, I'll reinforce a point made earlier for both in person as well as technological translation support. Some of the time the context can be lost. So where we can check the context by a person to validate that that intended message in English is what has been provided, whether spoken or on screen or paper in the translated language, becomes so important. Also noting when it is technology, there are limitations and still, I am sure, some inaccuracies, given that within one particular language, we may have many dialects as well across various cultures and regions. So simply translating from English to Spanish may not accomplish exactly what the population in your workplace requires to ensure understanding. So where we can engage with a trusted advisor, a worker, perhaps within your workplace, or if as employers and supervisors, we have developed tools of our own through language training to validate the information that we have translated. Review what Google Translate has put in front of you and ensure that it does include that context, intention, and any dialect that may be valuable for you. It may also be helpful to provide translated supporting materials like cheat sheets or recap videos that will provide those key points or the bullet points of the overall messages that you have provided. And those might become distributed items throughout the workplace, perhaps posted at machines or in lunchrooms that employees can refer to if and when necessary. Another great strategy is to engage in mentoring in the workplace. And this meets both the cultural as well as the lingual exposures we may have within our workplaces. For especially someone just beginning their career with your workplace, whether language is a barrier or not, partnering up with someone who is familiar with the work, who can coach and guide them along the way is so valuable. And of course, if we have an individual who does communicate in the same language of our new worker, even better. They have found methods with their employers and supervisors that work well to gather those key points that are important if perhaps they are not fluent in both languages or multiple languages within the workplace. So some support here once again through mentoring of both the multicultural and multilingual exposures within your workplaces. Some other strategies that have been shared by workplaces. The importance of setting up group communication and quite often using technology. Chat apps such as WhatsApp have become so very popular within the agricultural sector to communicate information. Again, ensuring the words that are shared within those messages are going to resonate with the receivers as part of the group. And a good way to foster the relationship and open communication with workers within the workplace is to have informal meetings, check-ins every so often to build that trust, further that relationship. We work together a lot, and especially when it may be over years and generations, these opportunities once more support that cultural experience within the workplace that then would prompt an individual who may be unsure, did not understand, or a question arises to be comfortable enough to come to their supervisors, perhaps. And to ensure that workers are comfortable, say the words exactly. It is okay to speak up. If you see something, say something. Acknowledging that within this jurisdiction, this may be very different from the experience that workers who reside in other countries may have, where speaking up would get them shown to the door or terminated from their work. Establish that standard as part of your culture within the workplace. There are many more eyes, ears, and other senses among our workers than even supervisors and employers. We want to hear when the workers do see it before we may as employers and supervisors. So do encourage them to speak up. Explain that commitment that you have for prevention. Talk to employees about their rights in Ontario for protection, and again, leverage translation to communicate those critical points within occupational health and safety. Make sure that this message is reiterated. Put it on repeat at any of the daily or weekly, perhaps monthly interactions that you do have with your groups. Remind, some of the time for all of us, even familiar with this culture, it's important to remind to take the time. If there's a concern, bring that forward. Don't wait until the next formally scheduled get together. Let someone know, whomever that individual might be, supervisors or otherwise. Now, I've mentioned employers and supervisors throughout, and on the last point about encouraging workers to speak up, letting them know it's okay if they see something to say something, quite often those will be the supervisors who will receive the information. As employers, prepare your supervisors well. Support supervisors with the tools they may need to be able to coach, guide, train, and mentor new employees, especially those who are perhaps with different culture and language experiences. Now, for our supervisors as well, consider preparing your supervisors to respond positively when what might not seem as a positive item has been brought to their attention by a worker, a report of a hazard, or even an injury that has occurred within the workplace. That becomes a part of our culture as well. So, of course, rather than dismissing or becoming frustrated in those instances with any worker, especially when we are building that relationship and establishing the culture within your workplaces for those who are just beginning with you, ensure that we do respond to any of that feedback provided in a positive and effective way. There may be opportunities as well to provide access to English and other language training. And access may be that as employers, you consider what resources are available in your communities or through organizations, associations, and networks to improve perhaps our understanding as well as use of some of the other languages. So this goes both the way of workers who may not speak English to receive English training, as well as those who do not speak the many other languages within the workplaces, and especially in the role of employers and supervisors, to add to their toolkit some of those predominant languages or strategies related to understanding the languages of the people that they have responsibility over. And building on that culture point once more, provide networking opportunities for the workplace itself, facilitating social networks, getting people together to talk about things other than the work itself is obvious, especially when we are providing housing and spaces for many of our temporary workers. That additional step, perhaps, of consideration for whether it is that group barbecue or going out together in some way, organizing events that bring people together, again, improving those cultural ties that we have with one another, improving that comfort across our population to share if and where there may be concerns, questions, or otherwise. Another question for you. What are the predominant languages in your workplaces? And I have no doubt that Spanish, which has prompted many more resources from organizations on the topic of health and safety in the last while, English, French, and Spanish are the more common in the way of resources, but acknowledging there are others, such as Indonesian, Filipino. And I will mention here as well, although not specific in the presentation yet, another challenge may be literacy. So English may be the spoken language for workers, but perhaps literacy is the challenge. So considering those visual aids and demonstration that we talked through earlier help to support some of not only the various languages, but also abilities that may be present within our workplaces. So I'll follow up especially for those 4 languages, 3 in particular, that have been shared. What translation services have you found to be valuable? Is technology through something like Google Translate, DeepL, there we go, or otherwise valuable for you? That's great to reinforce that offering. Awesome. Google Translate, ChatGPT, AI is, and there's another acronym, hey, artificial intelligence is supporting us in many, many ways. A lot of capacity, again, ensuring we're doing our double check when it is a device that has provided us with the translation, but it's a great running start. And where we may have individuals in our workplace as well who have some experience with English as well as what their predominant language may be, that's a great resource for us to consider as well. Have you come across any valuable multilingual resources that may communicate that health and safety information? So using translation for documents perhaps that you have created, are there any others out there already that you have found, like an agricultural fact sheet for tractor operation in Filipino or Spanish? Any sources of translated or multilingual resources that you have found? And as you put some thought to that, I'll share a few that are out there. And if not familiar with these yet, please do consider these resources. And I will welcome you through OFVGA and direct to WSPS, and I'll share that information in just a moment. Your suggestions of languages as well as topics perhaps that you have not found. Workplace Safety and Prevention Services has developed resources over the years, all of the way back to our legacy organization, Farm Safety, where I started my career years ago, on hazard-specific topics and other topics for the agricultural sector. Now, more of those in more languages have come up in just the last while, and here are the few that I'll highlight for the moment. We currently have 4 topics on ladders, machines, tractors, and material handling available in 4 languages: Spanish, Thai, Vietnamese, and English. And there are other topics in other languages available through our website. These resources include both a written component as well as a video for explanation in the various topics and languages. Now, the snip that I have on the screen here is a resource as well, a downloaded poster with QR codes that would take individuals to each of the language resources. Now, I will absolutely share with you the link at the end where you can access these and the others that are available. And just a couple of other sources that I have become a little more familiar with in the last while. The Workers' Health and Safety Center. While perhaps not agricultural sector specific, some of the content within health and safety is reasonable to be general. And the center offers up to 16 languages on some of that general information that may be valuable for your employees. Another is settlement.org. Other languages beyond what is currently within the WSPS resources to some extent, acknowledging many of those are related to the demographics of immigrants into Canada over the last while. But within settlement.org, again, some general health and safety information in a variety of languages that may support your efforts quite well. Okay. I don't think I see any others that popped up in the chat, but if others come to mind, I do welcome you to share what you have come across. Some of the best secrets online seem to be related to health and safety still, so we try to uncover some of those secrets in these sessions. All right. Resources for you as you are managing in multicultural and multilingual workplaces. WSPS has a resource hub, and on the resource hub, there is the opportunity to filter by language. And the predominant languages currently are English, French, Mandarin, Spanish, Punjabi, Thai, Vietnamese, and Tagalog. More coming, but for now, a handful. And once more, I will welcome your suggestions of both languages and topics that you are looking for, that perhaps Google Translate wasn't able to flip a document that you had already. So to find your way to these resources, WSPS has not only the resource hub just mentioned, where you can filter by language and other factors. We have an agriculture and horticulture safety center. Within that center, the very specific topics for this sector, from livestock handling to orchard ladders and the various commodities, including those that would be most relevant for fruit and vegetable operations. The multilingual resources in particular, such as that example with the QR codes, are available through this resource and can be filtered down to agriculture as a sector, and then the 4 topics that are available in the 4 languages: material handling, written in a somewhat general way at this point, the very sector specific ladders, machines, and tractors are available. and a few others here. As mentioned, the Workers' Health and Safety Center and settlement.org, as well the Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training, and Skills Development does provide the health and safety awareness resources as workbooks in many languages. Now, not a download on the website, but available through an email request to awarenessfeedback@ontario.ca if that is of interest or need for your workplaces. And I will mention that the resources and summary of the presentation will be shared with OFVGA to then be made available to the members. So if you did not snip or scratch down all of those links, no need, should have said that at the start. We'll be sure that we get those into your inbox for use. As encouraged, if there are languages, topics, and then in general, questions or suggestions that you do have for the agricultural sector and health and safety, I welcome you to engage through the chat in this session as well through OFVGA or through to Workplace Safety and Prevention Services. And I will leave you with our general contact information as I ask if there are any questions as we come to the end. And if so, I welcome you to raise hand, and no doubt Ben will help me moderate if there's anything that's come through different means to this point. And if not, thank you so much for this opportunity. As I indicated, you will receive the follow-up through an article with the summary and resources, as well as the recording that is available. And please do reach out through our contact information here if we can help with any direct health and safety requests. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kristen. Really appreciate the presentation there. And I know I learned lots, and I hope everybody else did as well. I'm not seeing any questions, so I think we can wrap this up. But as Kristen said, if down the road you do come across topics or languages that you're interested in seeing resources developed for, please do reach out to us at OFEGA, and we can make sure those get passed along. As well as Kristen said, that we will be passing along this slideshow and all those links and resources as well that are already available. So appreciate everybody joining us this afternoon, and thanks once again, Kristen. We really do appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Take care.
All right, bye everybody.